Hello, welcome. We are Board Game Opinions. My name's Jonathan.
I'm Dave.
I'm Steve.
And we are playing Tawantinsuyu. I
We
think
rehearse, honestly.
we practiced as well the order we were going to say it in. Right, this is David Turczi, I think, isn't it? Is the designer on this one, and it's a heavy Euro. There's an awful lot going on here. I'm going to give you an overview. I'm not going to explain all the rules because it is super intricate. A lot of interconnected mechanisms. But essentially, you are trying to stick workers out. You can see if I zoom down like this on this temple. This kind of what's the?
It's got Corinth now, so it's got a name in the rule, but Corinth now.
Yes. So it's one of those. Is it Mayan?
Maybe.
Or what's the other one?
Incan.
Incan. One of those.
I think it's Incan.
You're sticking workers out in order to get stuff. You can see there's icons all over the board. These are like actions, and depending on where you put your worker, you're going to get actions. And then you use those actions to acquire resources. You can see over here we've got gold and stone and potatoes are very important, and corn and stuff. And then you use the resources to do a number of different things. So you can build tapestries. Look, we've got these nice, what are they called? Weavings. You weave them into a tapestry. That gets you a bunch of points as well. You're getting your stuff. You can also try and get these statues. They get you points. And also then you can try and climb up on the temple. You can see on the right hand side here, this is the point symbol. You're trying to get points here. You can send, you get these, in fact I've got them in my hand, these worker, sort of warrior cards rather. You send them off conquesting, and basically you stick a disc in one of these corner spots, and that can get you points as well. You're getting points in a bunch of ways, but I need to explain the basic how you place your workers, because that's really what this game is all about. And it's tricky. So on your turn, here we go, I've got a yellow worker, but I'm not yellow yet. You can have several different colours of workers. Here we go, and you see on the board there's lots of different colours of workers. They don't belong to the people. You can have any colour worker you like. So maybe I decide to play this worker. Now you're looking at where your priest is. Now I was purple in this game, so my priest is here. And then essentially they send their workers out down here. Now you can send them to the further reaches of the temple, but you have to pay them more potatoes in order to feed them to get that far. And so for example, let's say I wanted to put my worker on this one here, maybe. You have to pay a god card. These cards in my hand are called god cards, and it has to match the symbol. So you see, I've put it on top of a symbol. You always place on the symbols. So I have to play this god card. It's going to go down. Scrolling on this is a little bit slow. There we go. So I pay that. And incidentally, if you've got a statue, look, I've got a statue that matches. That means I'm also going to get the stuff on the bottom. I'll get a coin and a point. Sorry, 2 corn and a point. But yes, basically playing here would get me 1 action. So I can get 3 potatoes or another 3 potatoes or 2 stone. However, if you were to play it like, say, here, next to other yellow guys, then you get extra action. So because I'm next to 1, 2 yellow guys kind of around the corner, I could get all 3 of the actions. So I could get potatoes, I could build a building. Buildings, you get a choice of buildings. And buildings, when they produce, get you stuff. So this gets you golden points, this gets you corn. For example, some of the spots on the board, like this one here, lets you one of your buildings produce. And also I can build some steps. In order to get to the lower reaches of the temple, then it becomes very expensive with potatoes. So you have to pay, is it 5 potatoes to get your worker all the way down to the bottom? But if you've used steps here, then it's cheaper. So you can build steps. There are like costs for building the steps. You have to pay some stone essentially. But maybe instead I decide to, as I go down here using the steps, and I place on this location here. So I have to pay more potatoes to go further down here, even though I'm using the steps. This would let me get a tapestry. Yeah, you can see you can extend your tapestries. Incidentally, what you're trying to do with the tapestries is you're trying to match. See, I've got potatoes with potatoes, stone with stone. At the end of each age, the game's played over 3 ages, you get income from your tapestries. But also at the end of the game, the longer your longest tapestry is, basically, the more points you get. Sort of triangle number points for those. This action here would let me get a statue. Notice I'm next to 1 other yellow guy, so placing it gets me 1 action. Because I'm next to 1 other yellow, I get another action. So I could do the tapestry and I could build one of the statues. That's these things here. You get quite a lot of points for building statues. So you can see there's a lot of thought that goes into where you put your worker, because you're trying to match the colours with the existing colours. You can't go when another worker's gone though, and they stay there for the rest of the game once they've been placed. But you also need to make sure it matches the god card in your hand. The symbol has to match. You also need to make sure you've got enough potatoes to pay the costs. because the further round you go as well from your guy, the more potatoes you have to pay. So there's an awful lot to think about just placing one guy, and the game can be quite AP prone, I'll warn you, in terms of placing your workers. Now that's one main thing you can do on your turn. Instead of that, you can take one of these big central actions, and they're quite important. So this production lets you produce on all of your buildings, but when you do this, you've got to flip them over. Yep, so these buildings, I get gold and potatoes and corn and stuff. You flip them over to say that you've used them. But then everybody else, whenever you take one of these big central actions, gets to do that action as well. But there's usually not quite as good. So for example, when I take the action, having done the action, I can flip one of these back over, ready for next time. But other people don't get to do that. This action here lets you cash in, if you like, your statues that you've already bought to advance on the temple. So if I pay in one of my big statues, then I would get to move up 3 spaces. And when you move up on the temple tracks, you're getting all the stuff on the left as you go up, but also every scoring age, so 3 times in the whole game, you get the points on the right as well. So potentially you can get a lot of points, you can see, and at the end of the game, if you get all the way up here, you can get tons of points. So don't ignore the temples, Steve always tells me, and I still struggle. Something else you can do is conquesting. Now that's, let's say, what these cards are in your hand for. You have to pay bread to kind of get them out of your hand. You can see I've actually got one here that's already been flipped over. But you pay some bread and you get them out. And then you can either flip them, like this one's being flipped, and potentially unflip it later. Or sometimes they will die. So for example, if I send my guy here, this one's already been taken, but I could conquest on this spot to get 3 potatoes and 2 stone. I'd have to flip one of the guys and kill off one of the other guys. So you're trying to get the resources. These spots up here get you points. In this corner, you're getting corn. They move you up on the temples, which is quite important. And in the bottom left, we can get statues and some weaving. So a bunch of different things. But at the end of each age, each of these areas, these conquest areas, scores points. Whoever has the most of these conquest tokens in that area scores points. If it's a tie, being further to the right is important, where the kind of more expensive spots are. So that's what the soldiers are used for. The next spot round is the kind of super refresh spot. And that's quite important because you've seen I've been flipping these things down. When you go to the refresh spot, you get to flip various things back up. Again, it's cheaper for you to do it than it is for everyone else, but everyone kind of gets to follow you and do the same action when you take these big middle actions. And this one here, you can basically hand in corn to move up on the temples. Now, there's a few, well, actually, there's a lot of other things you can do, but basically that is the game. You can take actions to acquire more of these conquest cards. You can get more of the god cards. There's a nice selection which lets you get the god cards. There are some buildings that give you kind of permanent special abilities, as well as the sort of one-off produce stuff cards. But essentially, you play, as I say, over 3 ages, and most points wins. I imagine they'll mention a couple of the other rules as we talk about the game. So Dave, first of all, what did you think?
Nah. I don't know, like, so I feel like placing workers, like, I like complicated games, but I think it's just too much. Like, it's just like, you've got to have the potatoes, you're trying to match, you have to have a card, you have to have a worker, you have to match the symbol, you have to, like, I think, like, the whole kind of placing things next to things. I think maybe if they took the symbols out, or they need to take one of the things out. I think it's just, altogether, it's just too much. I think we played this on Tabletopia, so I think just like zooming in and out, it was just giving me a headache. I think maybe I wouldn't be. This is my first place. I'm not sure I would think that if I played like in real life, but my initial impression is it's all a bit much, and like there's all the different types of workers as well. I had this card which allowed me to use mine as priests, which gave me special abilities, and I basically used it as a priest every time.
I should probably explain that. You can see here on the player aid, the different colours of workers have special abilities, so they give you bonuses depending on what kind of worker you use. So that's something else to think about.
And where you place them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like sometimes if you play on the right, it's too much. For me, I think it's just too much. some of the actions seemed not nowhere near as good as each other. So we were saying like building steps just seemed to benefit your opponents a lot more than it benefited you. It got you some initial points, and then but then it reduces the cost for your opponents to use the steps, and then you gain a point. But it reduces the cost by 2 potatoes, which is like, well, there's a 3 potato action like on the board, so that's almost like a free action every time they use your thing for 1 point, which isn't really a big deal in the game. So statues they're cool, but they're really expensive. The military seems quite powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, this rug action, building your tapestry. There's a lot of kind of like one player will do something and then the next player can follow and then the next player can follow. Building the tapestry, you have to pay corn and everything's really expensive in this game. But if you didn't get like the right cards for you, or like you just happen to want these 2 cards, and then the next person can buy a thing for corn, that could just be an amazing thing for them, and you can't afford to like block that and also do what's good. I don't know. It just seems like some players can just suddenly benefit, and like you have to draw the right thing. I think I prefer if you could kind of like there was like a pile of 5, and then it cost you based on how far up they were, and then or something. I don't know. Like I think the whole kind of randomly drawing them is just it's a bit I didn't like it.
Yeah, so with the tapestries, you can see on Steve's here, when you add to one of your tapestries, it can't be the same pattern. Yeah, so Steve couldn't put this one, for example, on this tapestry because he already has that pattern. And effectively, when someone buys a tapestry, everyone drafts the tapestries. So if you take the action, you get the first choice, but you may not be able to choose any of them, and the other players might be able to use them, and you just get stuffed. That's what Dave's talking about, really.
Yeah, and like Steve bought 2 on his turn, and he left the last one, and I was like, I really want that one, and then Jonathan took it, but I didn't have a chance to take it, and it just, if like you're the player, like if someone's buying loads of tapestries in the game, and you're just after that player, you could just, if you kind of keep your corn up, you could just be like, oh yeah, but then there's a big luck factor there. I found that a bit, I just didn't like it. Also didn't, so the warrior cards, drop mine here. So this one, there's these ones here as well. So yeah, they have 2 parts, and you can discard them at any time for the resources, but you can't discard them when it's not your turn. And yeah, like you have to, I guess you could anticipate what other people are going to do and then kind of be ready in case they take that action. So then you can have corn to buy a thing that you might want. I don't know. But then if someone then goes to military, then you're stuffed with that. I feel, there's just a lot of things that just rub me off a bit the wrong way. I think it's got some really cool kind of mechanics and could be really good, but yeah, it just wasn't for me.
All right, Steve?
I want to jump in on a lot of those points, but first of all, I think I really liked it. I think it's a complicated game, and it's a complicated game because there's a lot going on, not because there's symbols everywhere. I mean, the iconography is really good. It's just because there's so much of it that you're trawling through all the different rows on the pyramid for potentially a good action, or potentially a statue action that's next to the symbol you've got in your hand, and it's all the way around the other side. So I'm going to need to move my high priest first, and so that's cheap for me, or I need to get the right color worker, so I get 2 tasks. But it's really nice to have choices in games. The more decisions, not enough turns or actions, the more decisions you have in a Euro game, the more likely you are to kind of do better or worse than someone who's making better decisions. So if you're playing a game with 12 turns where you've only got 12 decisions, there's not much scope to get better. In this game, there is so much scope to kind of outmaneuver your opponents. And there's some really nice things. The Puerto Rico bit in the centre of the board where you can see that Jonathan's just bought his third production building and he's one space away from the production action. And you know he's going to go there. Maybe not next turn, maybe not the turn after, but you know he is going to go there. So you need to prepare yourself for that because you know you're going to be able to get free production action because Jonathan's going to go there. I need to make sure I've got a building, or I need to make sure the building I've got face down is flipped face up. And that's the case with all the tiles around the centre. You can see that, Dave's just stockpiling military cards. He is going to the military spot. I need to make sure that I can benefit off Dave's action. I need to make sure I've got the cards. I need to make sure I've got the food. And Dave hadn't played this before, and Jonathan and I had. So we kind of knew subconsciously kind of what to prepare for and what people were doing. And there's just so many choices. So the turn, you do A, place a worker, or B, take 2 bonus actions. That's what you've got a choice of on your turn. But when you place a worker, you've got a whole plethora of actions. And you say, okay, right, what are my 4 bonus actions? Okay, well, you can do this, this, and this. Oh, but by the way, this one is 1 of 5. You need to use a rondelle, and each of those your opponents can do. And that's 1 of the 4 bonus actions, and you take 2 of them, and that's 1 of the 2 things you can do. And there's so much going on. And you explain the game, and you can say, right, here's all the things you can do, all that sort of stuff. And then say, right, you ready? Okay, here's 8 cards, pick 5 of them to discard and get the stuff off. And you're like, oh my God, my decision, my very first decision at the start of the game is I've got to plan my first couple of turns because you get 8 cards and if I discard this one, I can then get that. Oh, but then I haven't got any of the symbols that match the free statue that I can build. And oh my God, are there choices on this game? And I really like it. I really like games with choices. And I think for that reason, it's going to be a game I'm going to come back to. But if you're putting it in the T game, basically it's the 5th of the T games, if you don't know what they are, they're Tolkien, Teotihuacan, Trismegistus, Tekenu, and Tawantinsuyu. That's this one. And it's kind of, in the series of games, they're all Aztec, Mayan, Egyptian, Old World, Euro games, lots of options. And in my opinion, none of them are as elegant as Tolkien, the first one. And they all have different problems. I can maybe do a whole video on it. But this one has problems. Dave hit on them at the end of his turn, is the card drawing. It's a bit random. You can stockpile your stuff and you can say, brilliant, I'm going to take this action. I'm going to draw 3 cards. Can I buy anything to match the tapestries? I've got 3 tapestries on the go because I had lots of corn. So I just bought them and added to extra tapestries. And so I bought 3 and I couldn't add any 2 of them to a single tapestry. I had to add them to different ones because of the ones I flipped over. And that shouldn't happen in a Euro game as often as it does in this. Sometimes you get to play a white priest and draw a god card off the top. Well, I had a statue that I bought early on, and not once did I have the opportunity to get a card off the top of the deck that matched the statue I had. It's random. It's lucky. I could have been lucky. I could have got it, and I didn't. At one point, I had 8 god cards in my hand, and none of them matched the statue. Drawing the military cards. Jonathan had a point in the game where he kept drawing 2 military. Basically, a lot of the actions are draw 2, keep 1. I like that. If you're going to draw off the top of the deck, I like having the choice. But Jonathan kept drawing ones with 1 military card. He drew this one's got 1, this one's got 1. I guess I'll keep a 1. And then when Dave and I put our military cards out, we put all the 2s out. And Jonathan goes, oh, that's where the 2s are. Well, Jonathan didn't get them. And so that's 3 instances in a Euro game that drawing off the top of the deck for those 3 things aren't there. And my biggest gripe, the military cards, fine, whatever. The ones with 2 workers on get you gold, and that's probably the best one to discard. So you've got that dilemma, do I play them for the 2 guys or the gold? But some are better than others. They're clearly better than others. The god cards, yeah, whatever. Sometimes if you really want the symbols to match, you can pick the face at once by taking bonus actions. But the tapestries, the only action for the main tasks other people can copy off is the tapestry one. Why? The tapestry action should be one of the central ones. So you can see people building up to it. You can see that gear. And that's the thematic thing. If you're saying, I'm the high priest, you worker, go down to that tapestry maker at the bottom and bring him back some tapestry. Why on earth would he bring them back for other people? Why on earth would you send a worker down to get tapestries or he'd bring it back for other people? In fact, why on earth would you go to a tapestry maker and say, what have you got? Rather than, can you make me one that doesn't match my tapestry? Like, what have you got today? Oh, 2 the same? Really? Why do I want 2 the same? They're identical. I don't want those 2. Give me some other ones. You know, like, so that particular action, because it's happened in both games I've had where I've been on the unlucky side of drawing tapestries. Now, I've clearly bought a lot this game, but there are 7 different types, and I've bought, I don't know how many books, 12? No, I've bought 10. 7 different types. I've bought 10. I don't know. Some of them are passed, and bear in mind, I've passed on some as well. So maybe I've seen 13, 14 different tapestries, and of the 7 different types, I've only seen 5 of them in 14 tapestries or something like that. So a lot of random in the Eurogame that potentially brings it down from brilliant to just good. But I do like it. Like I say, anything with choices is pretty good.
Rating?
I don't know how often if I keep playing this, how often I'm just going to get annoyed by that last tapestry bit. Like Dave said, having them face up and having a progressive cost to them, or having it's one of the central actions. And then if someone else does a tapestry thing in your search, because the central action is a bit hard to copy sometimes because it costs. I don't know. I like it. 8.5, I think I'll go for.
Dave?
I'll try it again, but my initial impression is like 5.5.
Okay.
Maybe push to a 6.
I, on the whole, would agree with pretty much all their comments. I'm not as disillusioned as David, but the issues that they both have with it, I think, are completely correct. There's just too much randomness drawing cards and tapestries and things for this kind of weight of game. Having said that, the central mechanisms in the game, I think, are excellent. And I don't think it's too complicated in terms of placing the workers, matching the symbols and matching the cards and all the rest of it. It does mean it's a very steep learning curve, okay? And the teach on this is a little bit off-putting. You're going to be a good 3/4 of an hour just explaining the rules on this one. But I played it a couple of times now, and it definitely gets much better in terms of your thought process of, where's the best spot to go? You're not spending as long trying to figure out the best spots. I really like the fact that the more you play it, the more you realise, yes, this person's moving their central priest to this spot or that spot. They're gearing up, as Steve says, for this action, and you need to prepare for what other people are doing to piggyback off their actions. I mean, that's the central kind of Puerto Rico thing, and this incorporates that really well while still feeling different enough. You know, combined with the interesting worker placement thing, there's tons to think about, and the more you play this, the better you will get. I'm sure, the difference between an expert player and someone who's just starting the game will be huge in terms of the point scores that they get at the end. So I really like that, the fact that the more you play it, the better you get. It does feel like there's a couple of different paths to victory, but some definitely have issues like the tapestries. You should be able to get a lot of points from the tapestries, but that's quite lucky. But the conquest things aren't so lucky. I think that's a bit more straightforward. And the temple, you can definitely plan for and try and get high up on the temple. So I really like your options. As Steve said, tons of choice. Overall, I'd be on an 8 out of 10. I think it's very solid with a couple of issues. Sorry, were you going to say something, Steve?
I think you can vary the length of the game. And I think that's one of the strengths in Tolkien and Teotihuacan, at least anyway, that the game is dictated by what the players do. And does anyone double move it in Tolkien? Does anyone upgrade lots of their workers in Teotihuacan? In this particular case, it's a player-done decision. And so you can do something that means that if you end the game quickly, you can beat them because someone's going for a bit of a longer-term thing. And you've got to let yourself not get caught out by that. So maybe it does fit in the style of the other games in the series, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a worthy counterpart. All right, well, thanks very much for watching. We will see you next time. Bye.